I'm regretting having had a soft mint now.
You can't chew faster with those dentures either, can you? Hello, welcome to Talking About Who. We are talking about Series 2, and this is Part 4. Hey, did it all. I am Paul or P-Bal, and if you are enjoying this, and I sincerely hope you are, you should like it, you should subscribe, and you should share it everywhere. So joining me today are...
Hello, it's James.
And hello, it's Jason.
This recording started an hour ago because Jason was having a soft mint and his parole clackers couldn't take it.
It is true. I've forgotten how chewy a soft mint actually is.
Yeah, we're relying on his views about a Doctor Who story that's 60 years old. Anyway, previously on Doctor Who and the Talking About, we placed the Space Museum 7th. I'm smooth. Planet of the Giants 6th. Web Planet 5th. The Rescue 4th. Joint 2nd. Dalek Invasion of Earth and the Romans. And our current leader is the Crusades. But there are 2 more stories to go, and it could all change. And the first of those is The Chase. I feel like we should have like a kaleidoscope effect.
And the music. Or
Don't
whatever
start
it
that.
goes. No, I won't start that again.
It
No.
basically turns into the Generation game when you start doing that. I'm not sure we can clear the copyright.
Is there
So-
cuddly toy?
Good game. I've got it all.
I can imagine the conveyor belt of tat going behind Jason there. It's like, I've got a TIE fighter, target books, a Dalek, and a lamp.
Don't knock my set. This is good, this is.
Yeah, it's lovely. Who has an introduction to The Chase then? One of you can.
Okay, I'll make a start if you like. So it's a chase through time with the Daleks. We already know this. Take my advice, don't look too closely at the robot doctor. It's just my bit of advice for you there, folks. It's a budget buster, this one, isn't it? Terry Nation's written another script here that, in fairness, relies on being in about 27 different places through a 6-part story. So you can only imagine quite how stretched the production was, I think, on this story. However, it's a Dalek story, and it's not quite the Dalek story that we've come to expect up to this point, because there's a little bit of a twist of fun and a little bit of comedy in this one that I think works really well. And as a 6-part story, because it's in different locations, I think it works quite well. Cast are on good form, and it's actually quite just a light-hearted story from start to finish, and I actually really quite like it.
Are you ready to score it, or is...
No. I'm nowhere near ready to score it yet because I want to hear all your views about it as well, of course.
It's because he's still thinking about what score he's going to give it. It's going to wait.
Oh, I've got a score written down here. I've got it down. Don't worry.
Yeah, I think this is the closest we're going to get to a Dalek comedy. And I must admit that The Chase is one of the ones. It was on the. It was in the Dalek box set, wasn't it? With Remembrance, it was in the tin, and it was one that I would say I watched quite a lot of times, but that's because it was on VHS, and it was one of the few I had at the beginning on VHS. But Remembrance was always, for me, much better than The Chase, and I think going back to it, I don't think the comedy is as good as I remembered. Yeah, this is one of the few stories where I sort of remember watching it and going, "Oh, that's all right." But going back to it, although it was 6 episodes, it felt like longer because they were in multiple locations. They start off, they spend a bit of time, and then they start sort of skipping, like when they go to the Empire States Building and they go to the Mary Celeste. They're not there very long, and then you've got sort of the protracted bit at the end with the mechanoids, and like you say, the the replica doctor, which I'm sure we will talk about. So it's something different, I suppose, with the Daleks. But I'm not quite sure. We talked earlier on in our season 2 review about some of the comedy, particularly when we were talking about like the Romans and how some of the comedy is borne out. Does comedy and Daleks work? My jury, my personal opinion, still wavering on that.
I'm just here to disagree with everyone. I'm not sure there's a huge amount of Dalek comedy in there. I think you have Morton Dill doing his shtick with them on top of and he's, whereas in reality, if someone were there and a Dalek were there, you'd imagine he'd just exterminate him rather than, having a comedy 2 minutes. But I mean, certainly the early stuff where they're sort of just slaughtering Iridians and things like that, they're quite brutal. And I think even like, suppose the end when they've got their fight with the mechanoids, they're still. I don't want to I'm not just disagreeing with you on principle here. I'm just wondering what comedy Dalek bits you don't like. As far as I say, the only thing I think that's an outright comedy moment. I mean, you get that slightly awkward bit where the Dalek goes,
I love that bit.
That's I suppose that's less comedy, more just strange writing. But I don't think there are little comedy bits within it, like I suppose like Ian asking for Barbara's cardigan, and she's like, "Oh, not again." And there are bits, and I think that sort of peppers through. The mood is lighter. Certainly, like the Mary Celeste thing, where they're all throwing themselves overboard because of the Daleks. I suppose it depends which way you look at it, as whether you find it funny or a bit grim. I suppose that they all kill themselves because they think the Daleks can get.
The reveal at the end, I think, is supposed to be. It's not an out and out comedy, but it is. There are sort of nods to the audience to say, "Huh, did you see this?" And I think you get that when they, at the very end, where they sort of pull out and you just see the Mary Celeste, plaque. It's like, oh, did you see that coming? It's. The bit in the when they're in the ghost house as well, where they're not quite sure what's going on, and again you get that sort of reveal at the very end as to where they've been. There are elements in it which are more light-hearted than you would normally get. You're right. There is, there are some genuine Dalek moments, but I don't. Overall, for me, it feels like the same as what they've done with several other stories this season. Is they've tried to bring in some comedy to it. Even in parts the music as well, the way that the sort of episode dances, if you like, as they land and then they've got to get off again before they've got, I think it's like 12-minute difference between them and the Daleks, and then they realise that they've got to make their sort of final stand. There is a different element to this story as to the previous Dalek stories.
There's some good, I think there's some good storytelling in it, though. I mean, just addressing the comedy from my perspective, I think it's at the right balance. As I said on the previous installment where we talked about the Romans, I felt the comedy was probably just a little bit too heavy in that for a Doctor Who. But I feel that the comic elements in this story just lift it just above a typical or standard story. So I think there's a place for it in here. But again, I agree with P-Bal here. There's enough solid narrative in there, the Dalek battle on Mechanus, the Mary Celeste, even the spookiness of what goes on in the ghost house. These are all strong visual elements, which is again a hallmark probably of a Terry Nation script. I mean, it's very a la the Keys of Marinus, this story. And they are slaughtering the Iridians left, right, and center. But there are some good comic bits in there, and I think it just helps the story move along. I don't find it's too heavy or too slapstick or OTT from a comedy perspective. I think there's a kind of a good balance here with the drama and the comic element of the story.
I think Terry is painting with very broad strokes here. So you've got so many things you can say. They've gone to an alien planet. They've gone to a man-eating jungle. They've gone on the Mary Celeste. They've gone to the top of the Empire State Building. He's met Dracula and Frankenstein. There's just all these sort of ideas where he's gone, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that. And so you get a kind of punch each week where you can be like, this is something new. I mean, he's slightly in some way sort of bankrupting the stories. I mean, Space Museum is obviously the fall guy for this. But then if I were budgeting and I was producing, I'd say, well, actually, what is big, what is hot for us right now is Daleks. And if we're going to get 6 weeks of adventure with Daleks and the kids and the families want that, then what can we give them? How do we make this really exciting? And I think the chase narrative, so to speak, it's quite slender. I mean, you know, I love how they call their spaceship the TARDIS as well. I love that. As branding goes, they're like, his is called TARDIS. We should call ours DARDIS. Diamond relative dimensions in space. Daleks and relative dimensions in space? I don't know. But it is a very scanned thing, but it allows for those stop and the brightness of all that. And I believe that the third movie would have been this if the second one had. So, I mean, an 82-minute chase film in colour would have been crazy. I think that would have looked amazing.
Oh, we'd have got to have seen far too much of that ghastly TARDIS interior that the movie shows us. Oh God, no!
It might have got a revamp. You never know.
Would have been in need of it. I have the stuff of nightmares. That TARDIS console room from the movies.
From the film.
Mm.
I think it's bright. I mean, the Beatles, folks. You get the Beatles in part one. That must have been great for the kiddos.
I can't believe the size of that time-space visualizer. It's just unbelievable. It's massive. And then there's a little tiny screen in the middle of it. I mean, we never see it again. We use it once in the story and it gets pushed into a store cupboard somewhere and we never see it.
Oh, look at the trouble it caused. It's like the thing you get in the Macro Terror, that, you know, the time space scanner as it uses in the moon base. Goes, little glimpse into the future, but we probably won't do this every week. It's just we've got a cliffhanger coming up for this. Maybe in the new series they'll come back and they've got a flat screen version of the time space visualizer, in a little compact one, an LCD
really
one.
I really want that. I'm going to fight for the return of the time space visualizer because I think there's a place for it in Doctor Who.
Ask Ross about it when you see it next.
I will indeed, absolutely. James, I just noticed under your thing there, is that a bald patch there?
I'm very sensitive about it. Thank you.
We'll not mention it yet then. Did I mention I've come in cosplay myself today? There we go.
Are we on the Frankenstein's House of Horrors thing? Which one are you? I
am the facsimile Jason, created by the Daleks. You'd never know the difference.
Well, your speech matches your lips for a start, so that can't be the case.
We'd know which one it was because this one's had a mint to disguise the drinking, whereas the real one doesn't.
Oh, what were they thinking though with that facsimile Doctor Who? Honestly, it was awful, wasn't it?
It is. I mean, I must admit, it is. I mean, I had to sort of stop myself from just going, "This is ridiculous," because the point where he sort of like, it's Hartnell's voice, isn't it? But he's miming it, but I don't. Why didn't they just use Hartnell? Why didn't
to fight himself?
Well, no, you could use a dump, you know, a stuntman. There was plenty of times when people stood in for Hartnell because he was on holiday, but in the scenes where he's with the Daleks, you know, it just I don't know. It's really odd.
You'll never really know the difference. You'll never be able to tell the difference. That's what the Daleks are saying.
But I'm going to side with the Daleks here, and I think it's all very well for us to say with our 46-inch HD TV screens, doesn't this look dreadful? But in 1965, when it was that big and flickering in the corner of your room, you probably didn't really notice.
when they were watching it on the space-time visualizer, it was
But
that.
they would have been though. I mean, that would have been a big screen for you in 1965. I think it is for an audience now and us watching it. It is like Blymus. He doesn't look a lot like him. But I think in 1965, and I wasn't there. Jason will be able to verify this. It would have been less noticeable.
Mm.
All I can now think is they missed a merchandising opportunity here to merchandise the time-space visualizer as the toy of the year for 1965. No, I agree. On the TVs of those days, you're not likely to have necessarily have picked it up, although I think it was fairly obvious. But it was a good idea to. I think it was a good plot point, but it was just unfortunately not that terribly well executed on screen. Whereas I think they could have used Bill in those scenes as well as the other scenes, and brought a stunt double in just to do the fight sequence when they got to it.
Yeah.
But that's also moving around the sets and things, isn't it? You physically got to get into position and get your costume into position, and running around the cables and the cameras. I just think you physically wouldn't have got Mr. Hartnell into the different scenes in the time available.
And it's quite possibly why they ended up, from a production perspective, going down that route, because you're quite right, actually, because it would have been filmed almost as live, essentially, with a few stops for a cut here and there. So yeah, I agree. They couldn't make it happen, actually, thinking about it.
Say, I'm the voice of reason.
Well, there's a first for everything.
And it does give you the great thing of being able to call your episode The Death of Doctor Who. Because he does get killed.
He does.
It does.
He gets his innards ripped out.
Although there is that point during the fight where I think where TV's Doctor Who doesn't help himself by suggesting that he's going to batter the crap out of Ian, and it's kind of like, maybe if you'd have just been a bit nicer, you'd have been recognised sooner. You wouldn't have had to wait for him to have mistaken Vicki for Susan and like quick, grab a rock, crush his skull in.
Well,
Violence at Doctor Who.
Well, he's had form for that in the past, don't forget.
He has had form for that in the past, and he'll have form for it again the next story, won't he?
Oh, spoilers.
Oh.
Jason, you have watched the next story, haven't you? There isn't spoilers because you've not watched it, is it?
No, it's spoilers to the viewer, because we've not got there yet. We're not talking about it.
I've seen it on the time-space visualizer, so I'm not coming up.
Oh, I want one of them. I desperately want one of them.
Some things that I do like about this episode. So, I love the mechanoids. I think they are so. I mean, they're not scary, but they are so cute. I mean, they did come back recently in the animation, the Dalek animation, which I quite enjoyed. I quite enjoyed seeing them back. I think they're a sort of, nice design. I think they're well matched against the Daleks in this story. As something different. Again, it always feels like in this season that they're looking for the next Dalek, the next alien that's going to be massive. And maybe they thought this, the mechanoids were going to be that, but it didn't really sort of take off. But I like them. I like their design.
To some respect, though, James, for me, the mechanoids are hideously underused. If you're going to bring a foe in, such as the mechanoids, go to all that expense of building and designing new props and, making them the sort of the peak of the story at the end. To me, the script should really have introduced them much earlier in the narrative, so that potentially they may have been chasing the Daleks and the Daleks chasing the Doctor. You could have had all sorts of permutations, but they feel like a little bit of a wasted opportunity. And you're right, they were looking at potentially marketing the mechanoids as, again, they were always looking for ideas for the next big Dalek. They were still a way off finding that just at this stage. They could well have been, had there been perhaps just a little bit more better use of them then, I suppose, in the narrative.
Oh, go on.
No.
I was going to say, I would prefer a 4-episode story with a little bit of, the Daleks have got a time machine at the beginning, but then like 3 episodes of Daleks versus the Doctor versus the mechanoids than what we have here. I think they're a really sort of nice idea and a nice alien, and I think it would have been good to have some sort of pitch battle bigger than what we get here.
But they're so cumbersome. They take it so. There's that awful scene where they're in the lift and everyone's pinned back, and it's kind of like you can't. You can do the filmed battle with them because you can take the time to do the shots and you can do all that. But on a set, and especially the small sort of Doctor Who's a mechanoid is just so big and clunky, and you couldn't have put it in the House of Horrors. You couldn't have put it on top of the Empire State Building. There's very little space within the rest of the story that you could fit it. Just their big old dreary looking city. So it's kind of like they've got a lovely sort of 60s vibe. I'll always say that because it's 1965, but they're just too clunky to either be frightening or practical. Even down to the voice where it's all kind of, it's like, oh gosh, even your bloody voices are a bit kind of like, Rrr. So you can see that on paper it's like, oh, we have got another race of Daleks here. They are going to be so amazing. Shorecraft have got them. They're building them as we speak. This has cost more than the Space Museum for each one of these. And then they've turned up and they're like 20 foot wide, and they've gone, maybe we can't store these between because they're too big to pay for the storage. Maybe they don't fit on the sets either. Maybe they're a little bit crap and we'll have to wait 50 years for a terrible animation to save them. Oh, the animation was desperate. We tried to sit through that. People died. People died watching that.
Oh, it's good to always hear your opinions.
It was loved by people.
I totally agree with your view of the mechanoids. I wish they'd come up with a design possibly that was better used, and they could have used them in their own right, I think. But you're right, those things were ridiculous for that studio set. But you are right with the lift and all that. You can't take it away, though. The filmed battle scenes between the Daleks and the mechanoids, extremely well done.
But they are. I concur that because you can take the time to shoot it and obviously the space to shoot it, and that works a treat. But you've got the little what are they conquering the universe? These little man. I don't even know how they kept Stephen prisoner. Really, I mean, you'd only got to go around the other side of them, and they wouldn't sort of see what he was doing. Yeah, I do slightly feel as well. There are parts in this where I think Terry might be writing a bit more Susan than Vicki, because there are bits where Vicki's character has to be a little bit more feeble than I think she has been previously, and that's a bit of a shame. But it's lovely, I think. I mean, there's two sort of big companion things to deal with here, because we're losing some and gaining some. And it is funny, because I think Peter does do such different. I mean, Morton Till is it's a comedy performance. And then Stephen, but they are, I mean, I guess, what are they, 3 weeks apart? 2-3 weeks apart?
3 weeks apart, I think, yeah.
I think you'd be hard pressed as an audience to be like, oh, it's not him on the temples. So I think I think that works, and I think he comes in with a we always say this, he comes in with a fresh energy to it, I think.
Yeah, he does. I mean, obviously, we only get for a fairly limited view of him in episode 6, essentially, when they're all in the cell, and effectively we don't know if he survived the mechanoid city being blown up, and obviously we see him for the first time properly at the beginning of the next story. But you're right, I don't think the casual viewer back then would have noticed that it was the same actor, and let's face it, this season's been full of bringing the same actors back story after story, actually, to boost up the cast, it's fair to say.
I do slightly worry that in between wandering out into the jungle on Mechanus and into the TARDIS, he might have met Riversong and had like 7 box sets.
Oh, you may just have hit on the next big finish there.
Coming soon to Big Finish.
The Mechanus Jungle Chronicles with Riversong and Lady Christina. But yeah, it is interesting, I suppose, at the end of the chase that you don't necessarily know that he's survived. But we do get to say goodbye to Ian and Barbara. I suppose our last, I mean, Doctor Who himself aside, they're the last link, I suppose, from the start.
And you get that lovely montage of images as they are, frolicking around London.
London, 1965. Yes, indeed. Very well done. Nice way to sort of wrap their story up, I suppose. There's that scene when they're outside the Dalek time-space ship. And, they clearly want to go back. And there is a real emotion, actually, in that scene. It's very well noted that Bill was unhappy that they were leaving because, again, it was change for him and he wasn't good at change. That's been quite well documented. And you can see the emotion in that last couple of scenes that during that recording block of them outside the sort of the time ship and then them leaving. You can tell it's really upset him, I think. And it comes across, I feel, a little in the performance.
Because he's worried they'll end up as senders in Spain.
Oh no, that's comedy. It's got to be the comedy. No,
that's not Spain and space.
Never. But the montage is really well done, and I think it hints at a life afterwards for them both, which is kind of nice. We don't often get to see the sort of end result of when they get back to their destination. We see Sarah outside the TARDIS in the Hand of Fear, and she wanders off, and but it's nice to get that sort of bit where they're on the bus and the bus price has gone up and little bits like that. Although how they're ever going to explain how they've been away for 2 years in real life, never going to understand that, but there we go.
They'll be less bothered at the school because it's been taken over by the Weeping Angels and the whatever rubbish else you've had in class and the rest of them after.
That's 2 years for you. How time flies. It is sad, though, to see them leave, I think, in all seriousness, though. I mean, I think they've been, the characters themselves have developed so well through the course of the 2 seasons that they've been involved in. And, Barbara in particular, the character of Barbara Annie in this season have been used really, really well. And, Stephen does bring a new energy and fits well alongside Vicki and the Doctor in the future stories to come. But I personally, having watched The Chase many, many times now, it is sad to see them leave, I think, at the end of this story, because it feels like the end of the original era for me.
We also get, I suppose, that's then the creation of what becomes the setup of Doctor Who and a boy and a girl with him. That becomes I know we get Ben, Polly, Jamie, but Ben and Jamie are basically job sharing with the lines. So it's interesting that then, having had the set of 3 and having to have the grand, that there's a conscious move, and that's what the pattern becomes, the sort of working pattern. It is sad to see them go because I suppose they have been very, but it also feels. I mean, having done this now in order, I think it feels right. It feels like they've done not as much as they could do, because that's a bit cool to say. But it feels like they've been on their journey. They've gone from not getting along to getting along, to having the adventure, to being independent, and now they've got a chance to go home, which is all they've sort of wanted to do, really, since the start. And then they've got their chance and they take it, and it's nice to see them happy. And I do think Bill really underplays it nicely when he's been watching them on the screen and calls them a couple of silly old fuss pots or something like that, and it's a nice off.
Yeah, it's a bit of a contrast, because with Susan, he sort of locks her out of the TARDIS. He's like, here's an Earthman, here you go. But he's really, to begin with, he's like, no, you can't take the Dalek machine, it will go wrong. And he really is adamantly against them leaving, but he sort of eventually just, says, okay, that's fine, you take the risk, you go off. And I think you're right, he is genuinely upset to see them go. And his relationship with Vicki up until this story had really been developing nicely, and she does take a bit of a sidestep into the Susan role here, but back in the next one.
So, do we have any exotic facts on Doctor Who and the chase?
We talk about the Beatles. The original plan was for them to be as old men. So the idea was that it was going to be the Beatles in the future. But the manager vetoed that and said, no, we're not doing that. So that was stopped. And I think it's the first specific exterminate from a Dalek in a story.
So, does it not exterminate a fowl when they go to they trick them into getting the food?
The first time they say exterminate when they're killing someone.
I don't know.
You stunned us into silence there with these stats today.
There'll be someone in the comments below going, nah, it's not.
They're just right underneath. Unshiven! Great line. Well done to Rosalind de Winter. She can not only do insect movement and giant butterflies, she can do a good grey lady as well.
Great as well, yeah.
Indeed. And I'm going to share the fungoid creatures on Mechanus because I think they're fantastic as well.
So, do we have any scores? They're not far off the Varga plants, are they? Uncle Terry didn't mind reusing these ideas, did he?
No, he didn't, and I almost said that with a straight face as well. I gotta be honest. There are so many funny little things and odd things, and there's some odd choices of where they go in this story as well. For me, the locations just don't make any sense in reality.
It's random. Anyway, right. Scores on the doors, folks. Come on, scores on the doors. Scores on the doors.
Oh, go on. I will start us off. This is not my favourite Dalek story. It is a bit of a, I don't know. For me, it feels really disjointed, and there are some elements that I do like, and I wish they'd done more of, and some other bits that I just think could have been done without. So I scored it 6.5.
She's tardy. She's tardy today.
Good gracious me, that's a shocker of a score. Okay, I'll go next then. So there's lots to like about this story. Little bits not to like, but there's a lot more than a lot less that I like here in this one. It's got groovy music. It's got the time-space visualizer. It's got some comedy with the Daleks, but it's really got some great Dalek set pieces. Story moves along at quite some pace for me. I kind of like the setup of getting to different locations and chase through time, and we've got 12 minutes till they catch us and all of that sort of thing. It's the end for Ian and Barbara, and that's quite a sad sort of point in the story. I like the mechanoids, but they do have their issues. There are some clumsy bits, but the good bits in this story for me far outweigh the bad. So the chase is going to get a very firm 8.5 from me.
Ooh.
I think we should nod that Susan had her dancing to start with, and Ian's got his dancing.
Absolutely. That's worth half a point in itself.
Is it?
Possibly.
He's hoping for half a point for his dancing now.
Oh, I'd get half a point taken off for my dancing, let me tell you.
Well, I like the chase. I think it's fun. I think it's bright. I think it's fun. I think it's, even though you go 6 parts, I think it rattles through those 6 parts. I think it's a hoot. I mean, it's not high art. It's not the greatest thing committed to film, but I gave Doctor Who and the chase, I gave it 8. Yeah, that's not the same as you, Jason. That's half a point different, and I think that's very important.
It is very important to note that, because we wouldn't want to be giving the same scores, would we?
You're just paranoid now about agreeing.
It's a well-deserved 8, though, I think. So, yeah, I agree with your score on that, P-Bal. I like it.
Good. It's nice that you agree.
I do.
Which brings Doctor Who and the chase, thanks to James's underscoring, in at 23 points, which
Oh,
is not enough to take it to the top.
oh, I had high hopes for the chase as well.
Hashtag justice for the chase.
You just beat me to it.
That
Hashtag,
mechanoid over your shoulder is judging you, James.
we
Judging.
need justice. We need comments that give the chase justice. I think James is completely wrong on this score.
Name another Doctor Who story where Queen Elizabeth and William Shakespeare turn up, apart from the Shakespeare Code. Anyway, we'll start picking on James. It's just too easy. And we shall move on to our next story, which is Doctor Who and the Time Meddler. So, which
always got his hard back.
what was that you said? He's got his what here? Ooh. I'll just thumb it through a little bit. This has come from Herne Bay. That's for Doctor Who fans. That's quite an important place. Google it. So, Jason, before you start, when the TARDIS materialises on an apparently deserted Northumberland beach, Steam disputes the Doctor's claim that they have travelled back to the 11th century.
I wouldn't like to stop you there, but it's not my turn to start. It's James's.
I love this turns thing. I love it. Very democratic. Would you like to continue, James? I'll give you a clue that it carries on with about a watch.
I just do what I'm told. So Jason just looks at me and goes, "It's your turn." So I just put not quite a true historical. Someone has been meddling with the formula, and it's 1066 with a lot of tricks.
You could write for Modern Day Target. You could, I think.
The Time Meddler. So we have the first appearance for the Meddling Monk, who will reappear later on. Sorry.
I'm sorry, James, but the light is glinting off the top of your head, so I've had to put my sunglasses on for this bit.
The hangover.
I feel like, am I tripping here? What's happened?
Sorry, I'm just bad joke.
I thought Stephen found a pair of Ray-Bans, and that's how he knew it wasn't 1066. So we've got the Meddling Monk, who will pop up again later, and he plans to change Earth history. And I really like that the character of the Meddling Monk is almost the sort of opposite of the Doctor, where the Doctor tries to keep history on track and is very serious about it, whereas the monk is more sort of mischievous, likes to have a bit of fun, likes to change things up. He's got his little list of things that he wants to do, and he doesn't really care. He's much more sort of frivolous and free, and it's not. When we recently talked about the difference between the Rani and the Master when we were reviewing 22, but I think with the monk you've got something completely different again, where he just wants to mess things up. He's not particularly, I would say, evil. He just has this power and wants to be able to use it for his own amusement rather than taking over the galaxy. So and to see that up against Hartnell's Doctor as well, and the way that Hartnell sort of interacts in this story, I just think is really, really nice.
I think casting Peter Butterworth in the role of the monk was sublime casting, and he really rolls with it throughout this entire story. He and Bill Hartnell play off each other terrifically well. Let's be honest. And at this point, he hadn't actually done any carry-on work, so this is pre-carry-on for Peter Butterworth. So you can tell that he's got comic timing, he's got great acting ability, and it's kind of interesting because this is a change of direction again for the show, because they're essentially bringing one of the Doctor's own kind, other than Susan, obviously, initially, although obviously they started off together. This is the very first time we see a fellow Time Lord, although not mentioned. And that makes it for me quite a, it's a great historical piece that this is set in, but you've got this whole sort of piece with the monk and his TARDIS and the meddling with time and all of that sort of thing going on. This makes this a terrific story on so many levels.
I do love the monk's pull-down chart of things to do. His plan's incredible, isn't it? That should be a wall poster or something for Redbubble or something. I just love he's got a tick sheet of how he's going to sort the invasion.
Even down to the point where it's like arrival in Northumbria, tick, position the atomic cannon, tick. It's just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends whether you've got a sense of high camp or not. It's whether you find that a really strange thing for a supervillain to be doing, or whether it's like, So I think within the spirit of this production, that is fun.
Well, I think there's high camp there. But if you look at all his collection of all his odds and sods that he's collected over the course of time as well, there's nothing there post the 1960s. Everything is pre-1960s for all his collection. So it's a terrific piece that he's obviously only allowed to go up to 1965 and not any further forward in time. And that's where he's been meddling in the past all this time.
That's why he's got a TARDIS and he can travel in time and space, but he's still got a gramophone to do the voice of the music of the monks. I mean, he hasn't got a D18 machine. He hasn't got a bloody CD player. He's got a gramophone.
Can you imagine if he had a CD player before CD players were invented? We'd be looking at this now going, how did they know? How did they do that? But gramophone, records are back now, aren't they?
Yeah, I think if you were going to try and pretend that you've got a monastery full of people, you'd probably use a bit more tech than your vinyl.
Particularly if you've got a TARDIS sat there. I'm not being funny with you. A TARDIS versus the gramophone there to give you the effects. Dennis Spooner's script is on point here, isn't it? It's a sharp 4-part story. And, he gets the humor, actually. Again, I've criticized the Romans ever so slightly myself about the use of the comedy there in his script there. But the use of the comedy in this one, I think, is on point throughout. It's a serious subject matter going on around the side of it with the Viking invasion and what have you. But to have that sort of monk and it played a little bit for laughs, but serious actually underneath the surface of it. It played a little bit for laughs on the surface. There's a serious undertone going underneath this character. And I think Spooner's script here is absolutely on point throughout.
I mean, sorry, I'd say that in terms of underlying darkness, Edith getting raped by the Viking, there's no sort of hiding from that's what has happened there. I mean, it's a kid's show. That's a dark moment, and I think a lot of the fighting between the English and there's a lot of very graphic sort of sword fighting, and there are the missing 15 seconds, aren't they? The legendary 15 seconds, which we haven't got and we can't restore, and all that sort of stuff. So. There is around the campery and the humour. There is a lot of brutality, I think.
And therefore, without the humour, I think this story would again fall into the camp of something like the Reign of Terror, which again I discussed when we talked about the Romans. And therefore, I think even though it seems like I've got a downer on comedy in Doctor Who, because I've said it a few times, the comic relief in this story is absolutely well placed. To give this script a real balance.
It's not like slapstick humor or over the top humor. It is. I love the interplay between Hartnell and Butterworth. How there's no sort of anger between. I mean, yes, Hartnell's the Doctor's annoyed at what the monk's doing, but it's not like I'm going to take you out. It's in the end he traps him in his own TARDIS and sort of leaves a note saying basically ha ha kind of thing. I like the fact that this is the first time you've really seen the Doctor interact with one of his own people that's not Susan. There is a sort of respect, even though they're on the wrong, different sides of the argument. But when he realizes he's got to dress up as a monk as well to stop him, when the Vikings get there, there is a bit of fun. There is a little bit of that sort of charade. But I just think that the acting between the two men really comes through. And in the same respect, you've got Vicki and Stephen, who are starting their relationship. You know, he's very skeptical. He's like, you know, we haven't time traveled. Then he finds the wristwatch and he's like, well, hang on a second. You said that we were in 1066. How can we be there? I like the fact that they've sort of separated them out. So he's got his chance to sort of develop his character and to start to fit in. Vicky's got more to do. You know, she was slightly sidelined in the last story. And then you've got, you know, the Doctor playing up against, you know, and Hartnell does really well when he's up against someone who is a great actor as well. You know, we saw that in the Raymonds as well. So it just, everything fits in quite nicely. And yet you're right, it's not an out and out comedy. There is some really dark parts to it. And what the monk is trying to do is quite dark, you know, even though he's just having a bit of a laugh, what he's trying to do is change the course of history, and lots of people will be killed. So there is a sort of melting pot of lots of different things, which I was really looking forward to watching this, because it's not one I've watched over and over and over again. And I really enjoyed watching it again.
And we've seen this with Bill Hartnell throughout this season, actually, when there's been strong guest cast that have come in alongside him. Julian Glover's a great example. You almost see Bill absolutely raises his game. I mean, he's always on song, in my opinion, anyway. I mean, he's an underrated Doctor. I think he's brilliant at what he did, and you know, for his age and for its time, I think he's brilliant. He's brilliant throughout, but he raises his game when there's somebody who he either respects or knows that he's got to lift that performance, and he lifts the performance with Julian Glover. You've said it already. He lifts the performance in the Romans. He lifts the performance here again against Peter Butterworth, and it's absolutely, there's a strong reason behind it. Although don't forget, we're getting towards the end of the season. Everyone's getting a little bit tired. Obviously, we get an episode without Bill this time. He's off on holiday again, quite soon, actually, if you think about it, after the Space Museum. So it is left to Vicki and Stephen to essentially carry that episode along, and that's kind of, you know, the drama, the ongoing drama of the Vikings is playing out there. But you know, you've got Vicki and Stephen who are at the forefront of that, and for a new companion, I think that was kind of the right balance to have, so that we got that, how their relationship is growing. And I think that both of them in this story are well used, and they fit well into the storyline that's going along.
I should just like to point out, Mr. Hartnell's only 57 years old in this story.
Yes. That makes me feel very old. But
yeah, there is a magic when you have the two of them, Peter and William, on screen together. I think they absolutely, yeah, there's lots of that. And I think also it's nice, the Stephen thing, the character, because again, you have that reboot of not explaining everything, but you know, you have that kind of, it's that introduction point where you can be like, well, the TARDIS doesn't work because of this, and it's stuck as a police box because of this, and some nice sort of comedy play on that. And you get the legendary line, don't you? What do you think it is? A space helmet for a cow? It's just great, isn't it? And of course, because they all think that they are back in history, you then have the thing with the wristwatch, where it's like, well, you think we're back in you know, 12th century, you wouldn't have a wristwatch, and so then that sort of wrong puts the narrative that, and it's beautifully done. I think, I'm not sure there's anything I don't like about this in some ways. I and also like the projection, the sky movement and all that stuff, that's all really well done. I think that looks incredible. It gives a lot of vibrancy to a lot of the shots, which is sometimes lost, I think, if you have a studio thing. Whereas this is all studio. There isn't a location to be seen, but it doesn't feel, it doesn't have that enclosed sort of, oh crikey, couldn't they have had a day out in Margate just to do something on the beach, or, you know, there isn't a feel of that. I think it feels, you know, That's
No, you're
remarkable
right.
director.
Yeah, it is down to the director. You're quite right. And I'd not thought about it. It is all studio based, isn't it? Apart from bits of stock footage. So that is testament to the fact that I've not actually written that down this time out because I just didn't notice it. So yeah, it is testament. You're quite right. Douglas Camfield, obviously taking the helm, still quite new to directing at that stage, but obviously still beginning to show, I think, some of the talents that we would see coming forward.
We thought there's a mystical moment where I think we've lost James for a second.
He's back. He's with us. He's back.
I'm here. Don't worry.
He's just gone down to pull the wall chart. Point 1, make this. Point 2, make this.
That would have been great cosplay.
I came to the Time Meddler quite late on. I'm not convinced I would have seen it before DVD release. I don't think. Oh no, maybe the video. Maybe no, because I had that dodgy end of the range. Was it Sensorites, Time Meddler, and it was like bang, 3 of them in the box. We can finish. It's the first Doctor. Oh, the Gunfighters. So it's the Gunfighters, Time Meddlers, and the Sensorites, I think.
Yeah, in the box set, the first Doctor box set.
Yeah, they knew how to pack them at the end of the range, didn't they? So that was probably my first experience of this story because I missed it on the 92 repeat. I wasn't watching at that juncture. But you can see that it is obviously a very good choice, I think, if you were repeating a Hartnell story to go with this.
Yeah, I think for so long, this story, in fairness, is a little underrated, I think. I don't think it gets the love that I think it should do because, again, watching it back, like you, I think the 92 repeat season was probably the first time I saw it. And it is a good choice to be added into something like this because it obviously got the monk in there, but it's a tight 4-part story that works well. And I came quite late to this story, and yeah, for me, it deserves more praise than I think it gets generally around fandom.
Even down to, I think, wasn't it one of those dreadful budget DVD releases where it sort of didn't. Yeah, I feel because there were still quite a few folk around at the time they could have done a lot more with. But the commentary, I actually did listen to quite a bit of the commentary, so there are extras out there for this. Do we have any exotic facts?
Oh yes, there's a few. This is because of the monk and because the meddling. This is where the Doctor first talks about the golden rule of time travel, about not changing history.
Hang on. Stop the song, to quote Mariah. What was the Aztecs all about?
Well, no, he talks about their own people's rule on that, but he doesn't mention the Time Lords because that's not until Pertwee that we get the Time Lords.
This is another dark web, this is.
Yeah. I think he's very specific in the Aztecs that you should not mess with time here.
The monk's TARDIS is the Doctor's TARDIS. Obviously, it's just been redressed
with a box put under the console, which is quite bizarre.
To raise the console.
And actually, to be fair, this season's been so poor with TARDIS continuity. I have to say that shape of that console room has changed virtually every story, and every story there's been something different. And then there's been that little box room they've stuck on the end when they've had something like the time-space visualizer or the astral map or something that they need to put in there. And then the following week, it's not there.
You do get in the chase, don't you? Mr. Hartnell lets Maureen get away with pointing at the time rotor slowing down. And she's not pointing at the time rotor, she's pointing at something over the other side. And no one said to her, time rotor is the bit in the middle.
At that point, I don't think they'd even decided that was the time rotor.
Mr. Hartnell had a very set amount of what things did, didn't he?
Yeah, he would have put a little sticker on it saying, "This is the time rotor." So to save money, Camfield chose not to have incidental music, and he brought Charles, is it Butterworth, to play percussion drum beats the same as he did in Marco Polo, mixed with some stock music. So you get that back. Yeah. Peter Purves grew a real beard for the chase, but at the beginning of this story, he wore a fake beard, which is why it disappears very quickly. So
she gives him a lovely hairdo, doesn't she? She gives him a little hairdo and a shave, doesn't she? Vicky's salon. It's something we've not been privy to in any other story, but Vicky is actually, as well as being, a girl from the future, space scientist, she's a cracking hairdoer.
There's a spin-off right there for you. Right there's a spin-off.
And it was
like a salon, Vicky's salon, coming soon to Big Finish.
Played for comedy.
Well, yeah. And it was the 900-year anniversary of the Battle of Hastings when they were doing this. So there we go.
And Jason was there at the start.
Yes, of course. I witnessed the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Yes, I'm that old, I can remember it.
That's when he started chewing his mint. He was still doing it for the start of this recording.
Oh, this soft mint has lasted longer than the recording, it feels like.
So, I mean, and also another thing that I also like, I never think about onto things I like. I like the end credits where you get the little face. I like the face thing. That's quite nice. That's a nice end of season thing, which they never bothered with again. But it's nice that kind of space into the credits things. I like that.
Yeah, because what would the break have been between seasons? Would it have been 3 or 4 weeks? Something ridiculous? 6 weeks? Something like that?
Yeah, it'd probably be without looking straight at me. I could resort to looking at this now. Look. This ends on the 24th of July, and Doctor Who is back, drum roll, 11th of September.
There you go.
So, 2 months.
Yeah. 2 months. I mean, it's a nice way to end the season. It sort of brings everything to a close. And actually, when you think about it, we started the season with, Susan, Barbara and Ian on board, and we end the season with a completely different TARDIS crew. So it's sort of nice to just reinforce that, I suppose, with the visual effect that they gave at the end credits.
Yeah, interestingly, it feels with this that Doctor Who's in a really we're solid because it's a Jasonism. I feel like it's in a really strong position because it's survived the transition of losing members of the original cast, and it's in a really strong position. Whereas actually what does happen with season 3 is it hits proper turbulence. And I think what we've seen here as a rule for the whole season is trying new things, experimenting, but being very successful with everything it's done and still being popular with the audience. Whereas, there's a sort of a third year blues almost, I'd say, coming into this, which we haven't done yet. Season 3 might be a bit of a while off yet because reconstruction man here. So
that's going to be a tough one.
But I think it's interesting that it feels in rude health at the end of this story, and possibly it's not something that maintains.
No, it's not, and it does. And I think this is I will use my own word, it is a very solid season. I mean, both this and season 1, I think, are great examples of Doctor Who, and it's impressive to think that we've got all bar 2 of those episodes that we can sit back at our leisure and watch. To sit and talk about it like we have done with our reviews. It's obvious that this is the end of an era, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, because of course we lose Verity at this stage now. And of course, John Wiles is just on the horizon, and it's well documented that he and Bill really didn't hit it off. And that's, part of the problem of what we'll get in the next season. But that's to come. What we have had, I think, is 42 weeks of sheer brilliance, I think, actually, on the whole. There's not really a duffer of a story in here. And I think it's been a glorious rewatch, in my opinion.
So, are we going to hit a score on Doctor Who and the Time Meddler? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll make a start on this one then. A good end to the season, tight 4-part story, well directed, some very serious subject matter with the Vikings, but nicely offset with some light-hearted comedy at the right time and not overladen. To have Peter Butterworth join the cast as the monk and the introduction of the monk, actually, would we see again at some point in the future. But, you know, a great addition to the narrative of Doctor Who. The regulars all on song. You know, Vicki well established by this point. Bill having had a strong season. Stephen just joining us, obviously. So brilliant story. Love it through and through, and it'll get a very nice 9 from me.
Do you do horrible 9s as well, or is it just nice 9?
No, they're always a nice 9. I haven't given many 9s, actually, so that's why I probably haven't used that word before.
Just not as benevolent as some.
I shall say nothing. It's a 9.
Okay, James?
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching this, and like I say, there are stories that I've watched over and over and over again, and this is one that I think I've watched 3 times now, including the rewatch that we've just done, and it really was like you were just saying, Jason. It was a really good end to the season. It took some of the other elements that they'd done previously, like you say. You've got great guest cast. You've got Hartnell raising to that. You've got a bit of comedy. You've also got a bit of, you know, the historical going on in there as well. And I just find it really enjoyable. I just think it's a great 4-parter piece of entertainment. There's enough for the companions to do as well. So I also scored it a 9.
Oh, it's so tense, isn't it? So tense. It's interesting because actually, I've always sort of thought in my head that I prefer season 1 over season 2, and I don't know whether my score, because I'd have to look back at the scores. I try to think what I've done, and I know that I gave possibly Marco Polo, definitely the Aztecs 10. So I know I did do some high scoring, and I haven't given anything this season a 10, and yet watching it as a run, I've really enjoyed it. And I even you know, Nadir of Space Museum, I still found enjoyment in that, and as you know, lower score as it got, I still enjoyed watching it and appreciated it and its position. So it seems really odd because I now sort of think of season 2 as probably being one of my favourite seasons, even if perversely there isn't a story in there where it's like, this is my city of death, or this is a robots of death, or there isn't a 10 out of 10, this is amazing. So anyway, it has given me an appreciation, which I shall once more enjoy when I see it on the Blu-ray. I awarded Doctor Who and the Time Meddler 9.
Ooh.
We're
What happened there?
We're all in agreement.
It's got a 999 emergency. So here's where my poor old vision's gonna fail me. Look at that. I should have got an eye test with Jason. Bottom of the pile for season 2 on 10 points. The Space Museum.
About the right place for it, if you ask me.
Pity the Space Museum. 8th
Great
place.
Great first episode, but the rest was rubbish.
Everyone's got an opinion these days, isn't they? 8th position, we have Planet of Giants on 17, and that's almost double what Space Museum was getting, but still down there, unfortunately. 7th place, it's the Web Planet.
The Zabi.
You're more of an old animus.
Rude.
6th place, and this I think was mainly down to poor scoring from James. The Rescue.
It needed a higher score than that. It's a great 2-parter.
Hashtag justice for the Rescue, 20.5. 5th place, also due to poor scoring from James.
This isn't looking good, is it?
5th place with 23 points, The Chase.
Oh, it needed to be higher than there. Needed to be much higher.
So 4th place, Well, I'm going. Oh no! I don't have a fourth place. Do you know why I don't have a fourth place?
Oh, we got the same score.
Same score, and ironically, for our third position, it's only half a point more than the chase. So we could have had a joint three stories at 3 here. But third position, we have Dalek Invasion of Earth and the Romans on 23.5. I mean, I'm actually impressed. The scoring here is quite close. It's tight. Second place, it was our leader. Hasn't made it. It's fallen at the final. Look, I'm like a racing analogy there. It's fallen at the final. It got 24.5 points. It's the Crusade, which means the season winner with 27 points is Doctor Who and the Time Meddler, which means having watched 9 stories, we've picked the one without Ian and Barbara to be our winner. What does that say about us?
That's quite shocking, but interesting. We've got 2 historicals up there right at the top of the tree. And, the 2 that were sitting underneath that, all 4 of those top stories easily could have been our season winner, it's fair to say.
True. And even though I think some of them, like Webplanet, may be quite low down there, but I still think they've scored very healthily for I think that's a very fair appraisal of the season. And I think write in the comments below whether you agree with us. I suspect Time Meddler probably isn't most people's favourite.
But I urge them to go and rewatch it because it is good.
I agree with you. I think having sat and rewatched season 2, there really isn't, even though I was a little bit harsh on the Space Museum, there really isn't a bad story in there. It's quite a solid season throughout. And, and I've been fortunate enough to watch this from the very beginning and be here in 1965, having seen 2 seasons of what I think are some of the best Doctor Who. I'd have been very happy with that.
Well, I am just going to go and see whether the W.H. Allen hardback version of the Time Meddler is as enjoyable as the video itself. It sure looks it. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
A pleasure as always.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much to everyone. Look, come on, you've did a Jason on me there. Had to waggle. Thank you very much to everyone at home who has been watching it. Like, subscribe, share, and we shall see you again soon.